Good evening, I'm Mike Marza. We're taking another look back at another day of testimony in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Today, attorneys for Combs tried to poke holes in the testimony of his ex-girlfriend. She's testifying using the name Jane, telling the jury she only agreed to sexual encounters with other men, so-called hotel nights, so that she could continue to spend time with Sean Combs. In just a moment, we're going to be joined by ABC News legal analyst Channa Lloyd to dig deeper into everything that happened in court today. But first up, Darla Miles with a recap from Lower Manhattan.
In contrast to the aggressive, brutal style of cross-examination employed by some other members of Sean Diddy Combs' defense team over the last few weeks, Tenny Garagos, gracefully yet meticulously working to show jurors Combs' former girlfriend testifying anonymously under the name Jane was in fact a willing participant in the drug-fueled, days-long sexual encounters with male escorts the couple called hotel nights, the core of the federal sex trafficking and racketeering case against Combs. Garagos asking, "These hotel rooms, you could see it meant a lot to him." Jane answering yes. "You would make the choice to take ecstasy." Jane responding, "I would say that Mr. Combs would offer me the ecstasy and expect me to take it." Combs smiling and nodding as Jane described the end of the hotel nights when she would give him foot rubs, saying yes, he was my baby, and that she would love him, cuddle with him, bathe him. Garagos playing loving voice notes between the couple. Jurors hearing Combs' voice saying, "Hey baby, we had a great time. Stay in your light. You are the crack pipe. That's my new name for you, or should I say CP? Mwah, mwah, mwah." And hearing a departure from Jane's soft monotone voice heard during her 3 days of testimony and a bubbly voice note responding to Combs. "Crack pipe is so real. I love being up under you. I'm getting so close to you. Everything just feels good and I'm so happy." And similar to Cassie Ventura, the defense trying to paint a picture of a jealous girlfriend who knew up front Combs was polyamorous and especially upset when he started dating Carisha Brownlee, the singer known as Young Miami. "What was hard for me was the imbalance in treatment. When I walked into the relationship, I just thought he was dating. It was definitely difficult when it became a relationship that publicly looked monogamous. I did not sign up for that." Garagos poking the tender subject for Jane of Combs' public expressions of affection on social media. "You were upset you didn't get a Chanel bag." Jane answering, "No, I only got trauma." "But didn't you get a Van Cleef necklace and a Bottega bag?" Jane snapping back, "I'm sure you have one." Garagos asking, "How much do Bottega bags run?" Jane more sharply answering, "How much does my body cost?" Then asking to take a break. A matter of housekeeping, earlier this morning before testimony began, the judge ruled on a mistrial motion from the defense. That was denied. Prosecutors also wanted to recall Dr. Don Hughes, the trauma expert. That was also denied. Tomorrow, court will be delayed starting tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m.
Our thanks to Darla Miles, joined now by ABC News legal analyst Channa Lloyd. Let's pick up right where we left off there with the witness on the stand known as Jane. That was an important moment in court, was it not? Because you had Tenny Garagos, the defense attorney. You described her as sort of mild-spoken. She's kind of softly asking these questions. And Jane snapped at her, and the jury took notice.
Absolutely. The jury was paying attention. Everyone was looking back and forth because, you know, Tenny's demeanor is very kind of soft-spoken. She's self-deprecating. She comes across very well to the jury. And suddenly, because she's questioning her about this text message that started out of jealousy, suddenly she started getting extremely snappy and rude. The judge actually had to admonish Jane and tell her that she has to answer the questions and that she can't ask questions back of the lawyers. So it was a pretty intense moment in the courtroom, so much so that she actually got up and said, "I need a moment," and she actually exited the courtroom to gather herself. So that tells you the type of temperament she was in. And this was important for the jury because we have to remember the only allegation of physical abuse was an altercation at her home where she said that she hit Sean Combs' head into a marble countertop and then threw some candles at him. Then she said she punched him, he punched her back. So now the jury's actually seeing that part of her personality come out a bit more, so it solidifies it for the jury.
She actually apologized for the way she responded to Tenny Garagos after that brief break. We also heard from Sean Combs again today. What was that like to hear the messages between the two?
You know, it's interesting because, you know, it's odd to hear someone in the courtroom like that. but especially if he doesn't testify, this becomes his voice in the room. This is the first time the jury's really getting to hear his voice. They were messages that we heard between the two of them that were mostly loving, very kind of typical dating. I had a great time. You know, I can't wait to see you. Let's get together. And so we heard his voice talking to her throughout that. And they had a lot of voice notes along with the text messages to corroborate what was being conversed about.
What were the biggest wins for the defense today in the cross-examination?
I think the biggest wins for the defense were that they really tried to hammer home this idea that there was no force or coercion. The prosecution has been putting forth that the home she lived in that they said was $10,000 worth of rent that he was paying was why she was in fear of not wanting to participate in these hotel nights. Well, the defense was able to get out the fact that, one, that happened almost 2.5 years into their relationship. The purpose of the home was so that the way they could get out of the public eye for these specific nights with these escorts. She said she wanted privacy. She wanted somewhere they could relax. And so that is why they started looking for the home. Also, they brought out her income. They talked about the fact that on Instagram, she could make $50,000. She was receiving child support. She had a thriving swim and a dress line. So the idea that if he stopped paying your rent, you wouldn't be able to was really not as clear after the cross-examination today, and I think that was very important. The other thing that they brought out was that they really talked about her and the escorts. The idea that she called herself, Sean, and one of the escorts a trifecta, and that she was really excited and had a personal relationship with the escort really speaks more to willingness. Even the text message that we shared where she initiates or wants to partake in one, the jury really paid attention to that.
And it's interesting because then the prosecution wanted to bring back the trauma expert maybe to rebut some of those types of behaviors, and the judge said no.
Yes, the judge said no. You had one bite at the apple. They were there. You should have talked about all the types of relationships, because they also wanted to frame Mia's testimony to say that this can actually occur in a workplace relationship where there is no romance. But the judge said no. You knew who you had testifying. You knew what witnesses were coming up. You should have elicited that testimony at that time.
So what happens next? Tomorrow the cross-examination continues?
Correct. The cross-examination continues. Garagos has indicated that she expects to be done by Thursday, so we expect to have Jane off the stand by Thursday.
And she's been on for so many hours now. How does that play in the room, especially when you had such an emotionally charged experience today?
You know, it's interesting. I think this gives that dynamic. They actually get to see her personality develop, because let's remember, witnesses do wear down over time, and you start to see their real demeanor, not what they've been coached for and not what they've been, you know, told to kind of display. So we're starting to see that. The other thing is she's a very important witness, because let's remember, Cassie's relationship was 11 years ago, right? So we're talking about a relationship that was very fresh, very new.
Up until the point he was arrested.
Exactly. And so that brings a lot of color. And where is it now? Because we all know that things can occur in our past, but what are you doing present day? And so she provides that color. And so the jurors are paying rapt attention.
Also interesting, we learned this yesterday, that he is still paying for not only the rent for this home that we talked about, but also the attorney fees for her personal attorney.
Exactly. He's been paying her attorney's fees since he was indicted and they came to her home to talk to her. He's also been paying the rent for what she says is now 3.5 years. So this idea, and when asked on the stand, do you feel as though he's tried to coerce or ask you for anything back? She was very clear. She said, no, absolutely not. So this, again, takes away that idea that this was force and coercion or something he was holding over her head.
Just a couple of more. Where do we stand in this case right now? We're in it every day. We talk about the debrief. You are literally in it every day because you're there in court. For the public, that, you know, I'm talking to some friends of mine. I'm talking to people who maybe were fans of Sean Combs before, or are just disgusted with the types of behaviors that they've already witnessed with the video of the attack in that hotel. But they don't really know where to place the charges that he faces, and that's kind of what we're down to. A lot of people say he is, and even the defense said he's not a great guy when it comes to, obviously, violence against Cassie Ventura and some of these other things he's accused of. But is he guilty of the crimes that he's charged with? That's the challenge for jurors right now, right?
Absolutely. That's a challenge for most people that I speak with, the people I interact with in the courtroom, the public that's allowed to be in there. That is the struggle, because everyone understands, and as you said, the defense admitted it. Some of his actions towards Cassie were indefensible. They admitted that. He is not a great person. You're going to hear things that you don't like, and that is what we're finding out. But the question is he guilty of the charges? One, RICO, which is the conspiracy with others to continue this criminal enterprise, and those underlying underlying predicate acts, and then the trafficking. Were these women actually trafficked through force or coercion? I think that the witness today, Jane, it really got very muddled because she seemed to be a very willing participant. Unlike Cassie, we know that she was under physical abuse and other things. This witness doesn't seem as though she was unwilling. She admits that she consented to take part in these things because she wanted to keep him happy. So underlying charges, I'm not sure I'm seeing all of them. The transportation for prostitution, I do think that they will get a charge on that. The others, I'm not seeing it yet. And we have to remember we are close to the end of the prosecution's case in chief. They are due to be resting by early next week.
So finally for this conversation tonight, if you are, let's do both sides. If you're the prosecution, what do you need to do to finish up your case in a strong way?
If I was the prosecution, I'd be hoping, and I really do hope, that they have a bodyguard or some other person that's going to tie all these events together. You want someone who's seen both aspects, the relationship aspect and the work aspect, so they can speak to the dynamic and how it was interrelated. That's really what they need to do, because they've shown little bits and pieces, but you need someone who's going to tie it all together. Now, if I'm the defense, I'm looking to combat that entirely. I'm really trying to break down, which is what they're doing, break down each witness one at a time. Because we have to remember, reasonable doubt is not one specific things. It's a number of things that amount to something that makes you feel like, I'm not sure. This could be something else. And if they get that feeling, then that is the reasonable doubt that the defense is looking for.
More to come. As always, Shauna, great to have your perspective. Thanks for joining us here. Court resumes tomorrow, and we heard Darla mention it is a delayed start tomorrow, so it's going to resume tomorrow afternoon. But stay with Eyewitness News and ABC7 NY for all the new updates. When court does go back in session, you can follow along with all the developments in a real-time blog, following the details straight from court at ABC7 NY.